am the co-founder and also the CEO of Hyla Fund Management. We're about to launch a direct venture strategy for Latin America. The ICO, which is equivalent to an IPO in traditional finance, happened way faster. So we have liquidity before a traditional venture fund. We are actually aiming to become what I call the Goldman Sachs of digital assets, which means that we also have more liquid strategies. In 2022, direct fund strategies were exposed to 16% up to 90%. What really excites me is the intersection where tokenized real world assets meet decentralized finance. But if you fractionalize, that RPs, a lot of people can have ownership. The crypto market and the systems are 24/7. So it doesn't matter if there's a holiday, it doesn't matter that it's Friday. I mean, I'm sure that you're being in that situation that you forget, to place your wire transfer and you're like, oh, it's Friday. Now I'm gonna have to wait until Monday.
Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever-changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we navigate the changing world around us. I'm your host, Jampo Flores, specializing in lead generation and AI automation, here to help you understand how our world is changing and what it means for you. In this episode, we're joined by Paola Origel, co-founder of Hyla Fund Management, to explore how blockchain and AI are transforming hedge funds and reshaping the future of finance. From challenging traditional banking to driving innovation in digital assets, Paola shares insights that redefine the financial world. And trust me, this is one of the most exciting topics there is. Paola, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. And thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure for me to be here.
By the way, before we begin in the in-depth questions, because I do have some, do you mind giving us a quick intro on who Paola is, what's your expertise, experiences, and what keeps you busy these days?
Of course, absolutely. So, as you said before, I am the co-founder and also the CEO of Hyla Fund Management. We're a multi-manager, multi-strategy platform of crypto funds, historically crypto hedge fund of funds. And now we're about to launch a direct venture strategy for Latin America. I started my career in traditional technology, creating and implementing e-learning platforms for big companies like Cemex, later on retail companies in the US like Target. And then I switched to traditional finance, where I work in different capacities, including in multifamily offices and also as a banker for HSBC.
That's amazing. I'm not sure a lot of people are familiar that there's an hedge fund focused on blockchain and AI. Do you mind giving us a quick intro on your company and what's its main focus is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the second longest track record as a hedge fund of funds. Again, we're not a direct strategy, and I want to make sure that people understand that. What it means by a fund of funds is that we select the most impressive fund managers in the industry to invest in them according to the strategy that we're running. So our legacy fund is what we call our liquid venture fund. And we call it liquid venture because the difference between traditional venture and venture in crypto is that the ICO, which is equivalent to an IPO in traditional finance, happened way faster. So we have liquidity before a traditional venture fund. In a traditional venture fund, you usually your investment cycle is 7, 10, or even 12 years. In crypto, is usually 3 years to 5, because we're a hedge fund of funds. again, because we invest in other fund managers that are investing directly in crypto VC, we can play with that liquidity, which give us a very big advantage for our investors. We only have 1 year lockup period, and after that, they can redeem if they want. Every quarter with 90 days notice. So that's one strategy. Now, as I said, we're a multi-manager, multi-strategy fund. We're actually aiming to become what I call the Goldman Sachs of digital assets, which means that we also have more liquid strategies. Again, these are fund of funds. Our liquid strategies are what we call a market neutral quant fund of funds. And we have 3 funds right now, one USD denominated, one Bitcoin, and one Ethereum. What is impressive about these strategies is that we're capable of creating a yield on top of Ethereum and a yield on top of Bitcoin. So to give an example, I believe like last year we closed the BTC fund almost 15%. That means that whatever Bitcoin you invested with us, you generated almost 15% more Bitcoin on top of the Bitcoin that you originally invested with us. So we believe that we have a very competitive product suite, and we're actually very excited to launch our new LATAM VC fund, which is a direct strategy, it's not a fund of funds, to support the ecosystem in Latin America and the founders who are creating impressive products that can benefit Latin America with the implementation of blockchain. And in cases where it makes sense, the implementation and synergy between blockchain and AI.
That's amazing. And one of my questions is, besides the fact that the lockdown period of your money is much lower if they're working with you, especially in this type of fund, what other advantages are there if we choose to invest with something like your company instead of the traditional hedge funds or traditional VC firms?
I believe there are many advantages, but the one word that I think it will define our strategies is access. Number one, because as I said, we have the second longest track record in the industry as a hedge fund of funds. So we really have visibility to the whole ecosystem, like from the top to bottom. We know the most, again, impressive and competitive with the best track record fund managers, but also we do know very impressive founders as well. So if you invest with us, we'll give you access to some of the funds that are already close to investors, but also sometimes the investment minimums of these funds are too large for some individuals. But if you invest with us, we can give you access to that. So that's number one. Number two, in this very new environment, especially for emerging technologies like AI and blockchain, as you know, the volatility can be really daunting. And we believe it's very important for you to have diversity. Diversification, of the sectors and subsectors of these two emerging technologies, it is very important because, as you know, every year we see different trends. So the first year was the ICOs, cray, and then it was the NFTs and the DAOs, and now is AI. So through our fund, because we have a dedicated team, like literally 24/7 around the world, we're able to invest and identify the real opportunities in these two sectors. So I think that access is the key word, when you invest in a fund of funds. And I understand that for some investors, the fee structure of a fund of funds can be less attractive, but I really want you to think about this. In 2022, when Celsius and BlockFi and then later on went down, most of the direct fund strategies were exposed to 16% up to 90% to what happened in that year. Us, because we're a hedge fund of funds, our exposure to those three failures companies, it was not even 5%. So that's just a very punctual example of how it can mitigate the risk and obviously increase the diversification in this space if you invest with a fund like ours.
That's amazing. And in your opinion, what are the best ways to identify which trends are gonna last the test of time and which trends are just a quick trend that will just vanish in a few months?
I think it is a tough question, but I think, okay, in blockchain, I think we're seeing incredible innovation in decentralized finance, or what we call like DeFi, which is democratizing access to financial tools like lending and trading. And then on the AI side, I think predictive analytics and language processing are definitely enhancing some customer experiences and enabling smarter decisions making for investors, for example. But looking ahead, I see the potential for these technologies to converge, as I said before, enabling a smarter, more decentralized financial ecosystem. And I think this could be transformative not only for developed markets like the US, but also for regions like Latin America, where financial inclusion remains a major challenge. And that's why I'm so excited about our new VC Latam fund. However, what really excites me is the intersection where tokenized real world assets meet decentralized finance. That's where I see the most potential for transformative impact in the short term. I think that we are witnessing significant momentum in the tokenization of yield-bearing assets like bonds and treasuries, which makes sense because these markets are already highly liquid and efficient, and these make them prime candidates for tokenization. However, when we look beyond that, the broader market is still evolving. The challenge isn't necessarily the technology or the liquidity, though. I think those are progressing nicely. It's more about demonstrating the added value and clarifying the regulatory landscape. So I think that
Yeah.
the potential integration with DeFi is
Right.
incredibly promising. And tokenized assets can
Yeah.
serve as collateral in decentralized systems.
Yeah.
As you know, providing
That's an
liquidity
amazing
around the
explanation.
clock
And since you've
markets,
said
right?
that
Because
you're starting a
the
fund in
crypto
Latin
markets
America,
are
is there any
24/7,
particular
not
reason why you
traditional
choose
finance.
Latin America over other regions? Yeah.
As I said before, I think there's room for a lot of innovation. I believe that emerging technologies, especially AI and blockchain, will get implemented way faster and in a more efficient way in markets where are needed. And this is not only Latin America, it's also Southeast Asia and Africa. We like it or not, systems in more developed countries like the US work. But in Latin America, I think there's a big, I call it like a white canvas for this innovation. I think these emerging technologies, if they're done right, they can catapult these economies to be at par with some of the most developed countries in the world. So, as you know, Latin
That's
America, I'm
amazing. And
originally from
one
Mexico
of the
City. I love
motto
my country,
or
but I see
mentality of
tremendous
Hyla Fund
potential.
is capital first. What does that mean?
Capital first. I think that for any institutional investor, our biggest responsibility is with our investors and create alpha and high returns. However, I always talk about this. I think once again, I think these emerging technologies like AI and blockchain are the second chance for the world to create a better place for everyone, where is a system that is more inclusive for people. So although of course our first responsibility is to
It's
create that
amazing.
alpha with
And
our
traditional
products for our
banking systems
investors,
have
we
remained,
also pay attention
largely
where our
unchanged.
capital is
And,
going.
there's not a lot of innovation coming out from that space. How do you think blockchain and AI could potentially change these industries? Do you think it could make it better, or do you think it could just show the vulnerabilities that it has? Yeah.
Well, and I'm just speaking for myself, right? But I believe my vision is deeply rooted in the belief that everyone should have access to tools and opportunities that empower them economically. And blockchain and AI have the potential to bridge gaps in the current system, whether it's by providing digital identities or enabling access to credit or reducing inefficiencies that keep costs really high. So at Hyla, we focus on supporting projects that address these gaps. And now, again, going back to the venture Latam fund, particularly in emerging markets where the impact can be even more profound. And I'll just give you, I like to give these two examples. I mean, in the Swift, in the Swift system, it takes up to sometimes even 72 hours to send an international wire. And in crypto, I can send any token and the most it will take is 10 minutes. So it's instant. Also, the other consideration, as I said, the crypto market is and the systems are 24/7. So it doesn't matter if there's a holiday, it doesn't matter that it's Friday. I mean, I'm sure that you're being in that situation that you forget, to place your wire transfer and you're like, oh, it's Friday. Now I'm going to have to wait until Monday. So these type of innovations, can alleviate, some of those inefficiencies from traditional finance. I think for sure. And the other example I like to give that actually, I thought about it, because I found out, a very amazing project, from Brazil is supply chain. We don't think about these things, but the latency on these Swift platforms can delay also the delivery of some goods, especially in food. Some of the delivery of foods internationally gets stuck in ports like up to 5 days. In 5 days, the food goes bad and then it goes to waste. If we have a more efficient financial system and decentralized system,
No,
we
just looking at
can
the ripple effect
avoid
that
that
could
waste
potentially
of
have.
food.
Just the fact
So
that
I'm
you said
excited
we
about
could
those type
avoid
of
just
innovations.
waiting the food in port for 5 days or even longer, just because of the lag in the financial system. That could open up a lot of markets because a lot of people are scared of importing or exporting something because they're not sure if the ports are gonna release it fast or not. Yeah,
Absolutely. I
yeah,
think there's big potential. Once again, I always said this. I think
yeah,
the regulatory clarity is one of the most important things we are
yeah.
seeing now in the US. I am very happy about that, besides the administration that is in power
Yeah.
today.
What
But I
kind
think
of
that
ripple
in the
effects
industry,
could a
especially for
widespread
institutional
adaptation
investors,
of
that's
a
very important
blockchain-based
for us.
finance could, have an effect on the global systems and payment systems all over the world? Yeah,
Well, as I said before, I think it's all about access. People having access to an industry that otherwise or before or in the past they couldn't have, because there's so many middle people that make it very difficult. And also the industry, you can open or have a crypto transaction today without necessarily having a bank account. That's unheard of. I think the impact is tremendous. Most people in the world actually don't have access to financial transactions. So when you think about it, obviously the ripple effect is massive. I think we're seeing more and more institutions, like Morgan Stanley and banks like Goldman Sachs implementing blockchain in some of their processes, which I think is very smart and necessary. And I think we're going to start seeing more blockchain products or crypto products offered to their client base as well. And we saw it obviously, with the approval of the Bitcoin ETF that has been very, very successful. So I think the digital asset space keeps evolving, and it keeps now it's more based on fundamental rather than just speculation. What I would love to see, obviously, and I think this is going to take a while because there are other considerations, especially with the geopolitical situation around the world, is how can we create a secondary market for some of the real world assets that I was talking about, but also how can we create a global financial system that it runs automatically 24/7 and we don't have any issues in terms of
it's
different
amazing. And
I
I
think
think one of
that
the
will be the
biggest
most
advantage, as you
powerful
said, is
solution for
the
all.
ability
But
to
I
have
think that's going
access
to
to
take some time.
financial systems, even if you're in the farthest island in the world or if you're in the US. And I think it's gonna open up a lot of market in terms of job opportunities. Uh, just because of the fact that you can send money to someone maybe in a third world country without the worry that might be stopped. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I
yeah,
mean, we forget, what just happened
yeah,
recently, but even like during the 2008 financial crisis, right? I mean, I was
yeah,
working as a banker in New York City, and I saw firsthand the devastating consequences of a lack of transparency in the financial industry. And I'm talking about Lehman
yeah,
Brothers, right? A major this Wall Street bank that filed for bankruptcy in September 2008. And this was
yeah,
just due to its excessive exposure to subprime mortgages and,
yeah.
and, and the subsequent housing market collapse, which affected everyone. And this triggered a ripple effect. that affected the global economy. And that crisis
Yeah.
was or is a big reminder of the fragile system
Yeah.
that we have today and the lack of accountability and visibility. So I really
Yeah.
think that blockchain is changing that. One of the things I like to remind people is that the reason why we see all these headlines about like hacking, hackers, stealing Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is because they're able to trace them
Yeah.
and they're able to
Yeah.
know that that hack actually happened. In traditional
Yeah.
finance, frauds happen all the time, every day, but they don't announce because they don't even know what happened or who took the capital, right? So I think that,
Yeah.
and now I think with
On
the
that point,
synergy of
since
AI, is
blockchain's one of the
even
biggest
going to
feature
become
is the
more efficient
transparency of
and
it,
more
do you
transparent
think
and
having a
faster.
financial market that is primarily based on trust and transparency could prevent a market crash like 2008? Yeah. Yeah.
I think in the long term, yes. As I said, I don't like to use the word
Yeah.
decentralized because I think it will be extremely challenging today to switch from a fully centralized system to a fully decentralized system. I do
Yeah.
believe that we need regulation and we need some guidance and direction. And I do believe the traditional financial industry can give that knowledge and expertise and bring that into the blockchain. So I think that we need to get into a
No,
better
I think that's one
distributed
of the
system
biggest
before
takeaway
we can
from this.
become
It's not
fully
that we just want something
decentralized
that
or
is
more
decentralized
transparent.
or not connected to our government. Some people just want something that is genuinely better. And as of right now, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And again, there's
Yeah.
certain what is exciting about blockchain. I think like some people still don't understand because I think that we need more education. Is that
Yeah.
blockchain actually has the ability to be transparent, but also to be private when it's needed. So you can either decide that you want to
Yeah.
place all your transactions in a very transparent way, or you can just close that down. So I think
Yeah.
for some of the transactions in traditional finance, you don't want full transparency. You don't want everyone to see everything you do, but you
Yeah.
want at an organizational level to be able for some actors, let's say auditors, to have full transparency and full visibility. So we can prevent, some of the failures that we had in the past, not
Yeah.
only not only
That's
with
a
Lehman
big
Brothers,
plus,
but also later
FTX.
on, like with Bernie Madoff, and
You
now
know,
with people,
besides
like
the
FTX.
idea that you mentioned, besides the fact that you can actually make it not that transparent, what other misconceptions do people believe and that you think she should answer?
I think that people believe, or most people believe, that crypto has not fundamental value, and I always invite them to actually do more research. Right, I invite them to just try it by themselves. Open an account in one of the major exchanges and buy some crypto. Now, every time you buy crypto, you buy a token. You need to understand that there are different type of tokens, right? There are the tokens that will give you access, utility access. There are other tokens that will give you access to services. There are some tokens that will give you access to participate in a network. So whenever you buy that token, make sure that you read the white paper. You don't need to understand the actual smart contract because it's code, but I encourage people to actually read the white paper and understand what is the purpose of that token, because that token is attached to a real company. Now, if we're talking about meme coins like Shiba or Doge, that's a different story. So those coins are driven by the market and the people just speculating and buying, and selling the token. And I think for people who don't have the capacity to follow the crypto market 24/7, they should stay away from those because they can lose a lot of money. The same way they can make a lot of money, there's no intrinsic value behind them. So if they want to participate, I encourage people to do some research, read the white paper, and understand why that token was created. Now, there are many blockchains out there that in fact don't have a token attached to them. And that's also very important to understand. Blockchain is an infrastructure. I called it like the electricity that is used to empower a certain network. And each blockchain has a different capacity and has a different purpose. With that say, I don't think there's going to be one winner. I don't think it's going to be either Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana. I think like each blockchain has a purpose, and as the ecosystem evolves and mature, we're going to see more new blockchains coming up in the
That's
space,
amazing. And
and we're going to see
meme
some of the
coins, one of the
existing
funniest
ones
things ever.
maturing and
You can see how
developing
people
more
try and
solutions.
make money from other people in such a way that they don't even know that there's the one that gets scammed. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's very dangerous. But again, I think
yeah,
that if someone wants to participate in the space, they should. And there's no better way than do it
yeah,
yourself. Now you have to do it with cautious always. And again, read exactly,
yeah,
what you're investing in. It's not any different from other investments.
yeah,
Now, people think that they're too late because of course we saw, Bitcoin growing, like 1,000%, since it was launched in 2009.
yeah,
However, the ecosystem is still very early and they don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin. I always say this. If you have seven,
yeah,
$9 or $10 to spare to buy a cup of Starbucks, you have
yeah,
enough money to participate in the crypto space. And you can buy $7 of Bitcoin or any token that you're passionate about instead of buying a cup of of coffee, and that will give you access to the
yeah.
ecosystem to understand not only what crypto does and the potential, but also how a wallet works,
Yeah.
chain works, and the transaction time. So I think that's very important. I
Yeah.
really believe that everyone should participate in the space to understand,
And I
because
think
there's
one of
no
the
doubt
biggest questions in
that blockchain
everybody's
is
mind
here
is
to
what
stay
is the
as
intrinsic value of
infrastructure
these
for
coins? Let's
every
say like
industry.
Bitcoin. What value does it actually provide? Why does it have value in it?
I think it's specifically for Bitcoin, and this is a very interesting question. Through my journey working at Shakti, which is a high frequency trading company, but computer programming language for high frequency trading. I was very fortunate to work with Arthur Whitney, who is considered one of the last geniuses alive. He has invented from scratch 5 different computer programming languages. And he analyzed the blockchain, the stack of code of like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana at the time. And what he told me is that, for example, Bitcoin is a full stack code and is very well done. That's why Bitcoin is considered the best blockchain for a store of value, or some people compare it as digital gold. I think Bitcoin, the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum is Ethereum has been more used for the development of applications up top of the network. And Bitcoin has been lagging behind because most people are just buying Bitcoin because of the price fluctuation and the gains, the capital gains. But the reality is that now, because people have invested more in Bitcoin, especially with the ETF, we're seeing more the development of the layer two or some applications on top of Bitcoin. So the value really is going to be about the ecosystem that is going to be built on top of Bitcoin. The same way that the value of the companies that are on Ethereum, that's the real value of the layer one or the blockchain. It's not the actual coin. Although of course, Bitcoin has value because it's a market value and people keep buying it, and the price will keep going up as more people buy it and more
Besides
people
the
trade it,
fact
which
that
is just
if
how the market
most
works
countries
with
or just
any other
most
asset.
ecosystems or global markets use blockchains, they can become more connected. There's less delays and there's more transparency. What other benefits would this interconnectivity benefit the whole world? Yeah,
Well, I think the ones that you mentioned are really, really big. I mean, for sure, I think transparency is very important. I think connectivity, I think efficiency. Again, time is everything, right? Latency is everything, but also just being more connected and creating a more unified world for everyone. Now, I'll give you one example. I mean, in real estate, if we are able to figure out the regulation for tokenization of real estate assets, you are talking about not only creating a secondary market for some properties, but also is the fractionalization of those properties as well. The same thing we're seeing more in a more obvious example is with art, right? How many people can actually afford, an art piece like the Mona Lisa? I mean, not many people in the world. But if you fractionalize, that art piece, a lot of people can have ownership of it. So I really think that there's so many different applications that we're not even thinking about. Healthcare, for example. I mean, it really, for me, is impressive and almost like unbelievable that we still go to the doctor and they're asking us to write our social security number on a piece of paper that we don't know where it's going to be or who is going to have access to it. I believe, for example, I think Bitcoin could be a very good use case to have a universal ID for all of us, where we can store all our data from social security number to date of birth and our health records. And we can decide when to share that data when we need it, but also we can also decide if we want to exchange that data for either a monetary transaction or maybe exchanges for other information with another peer. So I think there are a lot of applications that are very, very
One of the
interesting that
biggest
are
reasons,
not
or I think
right
just the
now we're not seeing
buzzwords that
them, but they're
people
definitely
use
in the
on why they
development.
invest in crypto is the fact that there's less government regulations, or just there's no government at all governing it. What do you think would happen if government steps in or maybe use crypto as their reserve currency? Do you think there's going to be less trend in crypto, or do you think it could potentially make it better?
Well, I think they're like two different, I think they're separate things, right? I mean, one is like we're seeing more like governments using like a stable coins, right? Which like pair to a dollar, for example, 101. And the other one is crypto. Crypto, as I said, the beautiful thing, and we see it with Bitcoin, is that it's not owned by anyone. There's no a centralized, institution that controls it and decides you can buy it today or I'm going to decide the price, which is amazing. I think that that comes with it. That's the power of blockchain more than just the tokens. So I think it will be very difficult for any government to actually own the network, own the blockchain like Bitcoin. They
It's
can create a
amazing.
stable coins, yes,
Do you think
absolutely.
in
But I
10
think
years
that
there's
that's a
going to be more
completely
people
separate.
adapting to
That's a
this
separate
kind of
conversation.
finance, or do you think it's just going to be more regulated? Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, but I think that more we're seeing more people definitely participating in the space, and perhaps it's driven by greed, and but some other people by curiosity. I think as more institutional players adopt these technologies, again, not only the tokens, but the actual infrastructure, we're going to see more people interest in the space. And we're going to see more projects, like high quality projects coming into the market. I always say this, like there is such thing as too early or too soon, especially with new technologies. We're still learning. And I believe that a lot of the blockchains that started, right after Bitcoin, they have learned a lot of lessons, and they are developing, new strategies, and new products are of better quality because now we're a little bit more advanced. I always like to say that. I mean, even, with Amazon, no, I like this example actually better, right? I mean, some people, maybe know you because you're young, right? But I mean, people remember like MySpace, for example, right? MySpace and Friendster. And for some reason, they didn't become as popular as Facebook. But let's be honest, it was like a very similar platform. So I think we're going to see the same in blockchain. We're going to see new layer ones that will search, or will get, launch in the next 10 years, like you said, that they don't exist today. So I definitely see the ecosystem of blockchain evolving, especially now with the implementation and synergy of AI. One of the things that I was the most excited about when, OpenAI came to the public was that in blockchain technology, once the smart contract has been published, is immutable and you can't change it. So if there's any inefficiency, that will also affect the network. But now, if you run AI to check those inefficiencies before it actually gets published, then you can prevent some of
It's
those
amazing. And
mistakes and bugs
just the fact
in the
that a
code.
simple
So
mistake
I
on a
think that's
code
exciting.
can
And we're going to see
genuinely destroy
more
something,
of that.
especially in the blockchain technology. Yeah, AI could prevent that. And I think that would make it more stable for a lot of people who want to invest their money. Yeah,
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 absolutely. I think that's very important. So again, more fundamentals, less
yeah.
speculation, and a more mature space. So
It's
once
amazing.
again,
And
it's
besides
not
Latin America,
it's
what
not
other
too
regions do you
late,
think
for people to
could be
participate.
emerging? Which other regions do you think would benefit with blockchain besides Latin America?
Well, I see again like frontier markets in general where people don't have access or lack access, to financial services. That's very, I think like Southeast Asia, definitely we see a lot of implementation of blockchain technology in countries like India and also in Africa, specifically, I mean, the continent, but also as a country in Nigeria, because again, is needed. People tend to be very creative, right? And implement new things, out of need. And that's where innovation
Besides
really
the use
happens.
case that you
So once
mentioned
again, that's
about
why,
healthcare,
I
where you
think
can
that
have
it's
your
important to
all
pay
of your
attention to those
information in the
markets.
blockchain, and you can just share which ones you want to share. What other use cases do you think would emerge in the following years, especially in other sectors? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Once again, I think healthcare is a major use case,
yeah,
for all, not only like for data protection, but also implementation. And we see now solutions with AI is
yeah.
saving time, but also lives. I think that having AI in the healthcare system is a very powerful tool. I don't necessarily
Yeah.
believe that AI or blockchain will replace, the human touch right away, but it's definitely, I call them the superpowers, to
Yeah,
enhance, some of these industries. Where
yeah.
like healthcare is an industry that hasn't really changed, in a very long time, or they're very hesitant, to change. But I think more and more again with implementation of AI and the synergy
Besides,
with
because
blockchain
you
bringing
mentioned
that
earlier that
transparency,
instead of
the
buying your
industry is
Starbucks
more
for seven,
open to
ten
this
dollars
new
for a
innovation.
coffee, you should try investing some of that money into a crypto wallet so you know how it functions. What other ways do you think a person can do to actually learn more about the blockchain and just AI generally? I know besides YouTube.
And I have to say, little disclaimer, nothing that I said, during this podcast or it is a financial advisory, and I'm not advising anyone to buy anything. This is just a personal opinion, and this is just for informational purposes only. I think just read, really dive into blockchain, content, AI, try yourself like tools. If you don't want to buy or participate, buying crypto, definitely just downloading, some of the applications, playing with them. There's information everywhere on YouTube. I have a weekly newsletter. It's called Blockchain Hedge, where I publish, actually now it's not once a week, it's every other week, but I write, about my own experience, not only as an institutional investor, but just as an individual. I travel around the world. I go to the major blockchain conferences around the world, and I'm always learning about new innovations. Like, even though, I've been in the industry full time since 2017, I'm still learning because every day is an industry that it keeps changing every day. So the best way for people to learn is being informed, subscribe to newsletters like Blockchain Hedge, or just read the news. There are a lot of like news outlets like CoinDesk, who are constantly publishing content that is high quality and very informative. And follow, some people on X as well. This is a different world. Like the difference between traditional finance and the crypto world is so different, right? I mean, X is like a very official outlet, or even LinkedIn, for people to communicate about like crypto and AI. So I like it because it's much more accessible and more open.
They're
And
very
we're a very
closed off
supportive
traditional
community,
finance.
which I think traditional finance was a little bit more protective about
you know,
information.
since we're nearing the end of the podcast, what message can you have for people who are still fearful or just
Yes.
generally doesn't want to learn anything from crypto or blockchain or just AI?
I will really recommend them again, to do research. I mean, please contact me. It's very easy to find me on LinkedIn, Paola Origel. I'm always happy and open to talk
Yeah,
to anyone who's interested in learning more about the
yeah,
space. Subscribe to my newsletter. I think there's a big opportunity for all of us to participate in this space. And I think that one of the most exciting things about blockchain is that it's all about community and collaboration.
yeah.
So the
Is
more
there any
people,
last message that you want
collaborating
to
and
give to
participating in
people?
the space, the stronger the ecosystem will become. As I said, participate in
Yeah,
the space. Don't be scared. I know it can be very confusing. It's a 24/7 market and it keeps evolving and
yeah.
changing. But I think having curiosity is very important. And this space is here to stay,
Yeah.
especially now with the implementation and synergy of AI. So it's better for everyone to participate and be informed and not let others, to do it for you, especially larger
That's amazing.
institutions, because then
And
we're just
last
going to repeat the
question, do you
same
have any
mistakes we
book
have been
recommendation?
making, for hundreds of years.
Yeah, yeah,
I definitely, again, I would recommend my weekly
yeah,
newsletter. Again, not because I don't believe in books. I think because this space evolves so fast, John, that I think is one of the few spaces that I will recommend more to subscribe to newsletters or news
yeah,
outlets than reading a book. Because I have many books that I love that now they're a little bit like
yeah.
obsolete, to be honest, because the ecosystem keeps evolving and
Awesome.
changing.
And I
So,
just want to thank you
Blockchain
for
Hedge
joining us on the
on
New World
Substack,
podcast.
I'll be happy to have you all. Jean Paul, thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure chatting with you, and I hope we can do it again. And thank
That's all for today's episode of the New World podcast. We have explored some fascinating topics with our amazing guests, shedding light on the upcoming new world. If you enjoyed today's episode and today's discussion and want to stay updated on the future episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the podcast. And if you found value on what we have discussed, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you are interested in being a guest in the future, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email me at john.paul@aicynics.com and add New World Podcast, all capital, in the subject line so I can see it. I always love hearing from our listeners. And don't forget to check out our amazing guests. You can find more information about them by the contact details we provided earlier. Again, thank you for tuning in on the New World Podcast. I know your time is very important and I try to always make the next episode better than the last. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep innovating. This is John Paul Flores signing off from the New World Podcast.